Welcome to another ECHAlliance podcast. Today, I'm joined by McKinsey. McKinsey, as some of you, many of our members will know, have been a member of the Alliance for the last couple of years. I think 2022, we joined as foundation partners. And what we've been finding is we've been trying to, as we do with all our members, to actively engage our members, not just have a membership list. I'm interested in what people do and who they should do it to and with. And so our role as the Global Health Connector is to literally make things happen. Can I tell you, and I think everyone would agree, that is not as easy as it sounds, because finding the right person in organizations, finding the right person who's still there after 6 weeks or 8 weeks and hasn't changed is a non-stop task. So our organization, as you all know, I think by now, has 81 ecosystems across the globe. These consist of research organizations, health systems, hospital groups, primary care, doctors, nurses, etc., plus industry ranging from startup right through to global organizations like McKinsey and others. We also focus a lot on patients. So we want to make sure we actually get hold of patient groups and we listen to them as opposed to broadcasting to them. One patient group leader just the other day said to me, one of the problems with industry is they all want to give us something which our members can buy, but they never ask us in advance as to whether our members want it. And this is one of the things we're trying to do, to get people to listen to patients instead of assuming we've got the best idea in the world and everybody's bound to buy it because it's the best idea in the world. I've done a lot of startups myself. I think it's 36 currently, or has been. And I must tell you, there's some ideas I thought were absolutely brilliant and they absolutely went nowhere. Whereas when I listened to people and found what the market wanted, I was able to produce a solution and sell it to them. So I think there's a lot to be good through today in the next 20 minutes or so. And what I'd like to do is just begin by introducing Tobias, who has been our contact point throughout the last number of years and has survived, which is quite something, as we've dragged him all over the world to speak to people regularly. And today I'm delighted we're joined by two new people, to us at least, that is Laura Richter and Akshay Agarwal. So I think we'll just jump straight in. Tobias, do you want to just talk about this relationship between not just McKinsey, but your health tech network and the ECHAlliance and how that's gone over the last couple of years, please?
Yes, very, very happy to. And then Laura can also share a few more details about sort of what the health tech network is, how it's complementary to what you are doing at the ECHAlliance. But first of all, thank you, Brian, and of course also to your colleagues for this wonderful collaboration over the last couple of years. What I find, the cornerstone of this collaboration is pretty much the joint aspiration of creating positive impact related to healthcare innovation, health and well-being. Right, and I think they are both you and your ecosystem as well as our health tech network. We are pretty much often trying to connect the dots. And with that, I mean the dots between startups and investors, startups and life science or healthcare organizations, startups and public sector. And why I think this is a very nice match and a very nice partnership that we've had, Brian, is that your ecosystems are very much geographically focused ecosystems, right? Like your Catalonia ecosystem, where you bring everyone in that region. And of course, also your other ecosystems that now span pretty much every continent, right? And then the health tech network is complementary to it because it's a global network and has a slightly different vibe. But maybe, Laura, if you can say a few more words about the health tech network for the people who haven't heard about it yet.
Please.
Thank you very much, Tobias. So the health tech network is something very close to my heart that I'm very passionate about. We started it at McKinsey already many years ago, actually, and it grew from just a couple of companies to now including more or close to 2,000 actually CEOs and founders of health tech companies, startups and scale-ups. Some of them have actually grown quite large now. Plus, we also have a network that's the Friends of the Health Tech Network, which includes another several hundred investors and healthcare organizations, pharma companies, who are basically also passionate about innovation in health tech and becoming sort of one union with the startup ecosystem. And why I think this is so impactful to bring together a network like this is that a lot of these organizations by themselves are still smaller. And I think just by bringing them together, we make the individual organizations stronger. We enable sharing of capabilities, exchange of experiences, exchange of knowledge, but also bringing together people who may be complementary in some shape or form, either by bringing their offering together or bringing together investors and startups or pharma companies and startups who are active maybe in the same therapy area. So all of that, I think, is very important to strengthen this network, which otherwise would be, I think, a very sort of big space of a lot of small players. And so I also think what you guys are doing is similarly important to strengthen this health tech space, because I think it's so impactful and relevant for the patient outcomes in the end.
Thank you very much, Laura. You won't be surprised to hear that we agree with you, because one of our biggest problems is getting people who should know each other often don't. People who think they know someone but cannot get them to answer an email or a message for an appointment. We find that because we have members, because we say to people, can you please meet this person? They are a member. You get a better reaction. It's being like in a club. You know, people in clubs, even though they don't know each other, know they can reach out to each other. It's the same with the Health Tech Network. And I congratulate you on this, on the growth of that. But the growth is because that people recognize there's a need. I mean, you know, there's too many talking shops in the world. And what you do is you actually do things and connect people. So I just want to go back to you, Tobias, for a second, because you've been working very closely with us in different parts of the world. Do you want to just touch on some of the things we've been doing together and as an examples of what we might do more of with Health Tech Network in the future?
Yeah, very happy to, Brian. But I think one particular piece of complementarity is your deep connections and trust and experience with all sorts of European Union institutions and also institutions in, of course, in Africa and India. And I'll get to the Global Health Connector in a second, right? But if we take sort of Europe as an example and sort of just what we've done, also with some of your colleagues, right? I think there are a lot of organizations in the private sector, right? And I mean health tech startups, scale-ups, but also other private sector organizations, or somehow even university hospitals, and as an example of a public sector institution in a country, right? They're really struggling to understand what's going on at European Union level, right? What are all of the programs, and how do the different parts of the EU, right? DG Connect, DG Research, DG Santé, right? How do they come together? Who's doing what, right? And I think that is sort of a particular part on the healthcare innovation side, right? Where you and your colleagues have actually provided not only transparency, but also then sort of made sure that the dots were connected, right? And a recent example, if I just think back a few weeks, right, was this this case example of a German state government, right? They are just working now to connect 200 hospitals with a multi-cloud infrastructure, and being a state government, right, one of the 16 German states, of course, they are more focused within sort of the German landscape, and there is less established relationships and connections on European Union level, right? And I think that is a great example where then, for example, if I think about your speakers that you had at the Mobile World Congress from the European Union, right, where then these connections are made, right? And on the one hand, that results in good case examples and good cross learnings, right? For example, there is a nice and very inspirational, at least I believe, that health cluster around Helsinki that, for example, some people in Germany can learn from, right? But also the program in Germany that has kicked off is seen as an inspiration for other organizations across the EU.
Yeah. It's always, I find it very enjoyable and encouraging when you connect two organizations or two people, and then they follow up. And through our connections with particularly in Europe, where we have a whole team of people who do nothing but Horizon Europe proposals, where we bring consortia together, where we have, I think it's 10 or 12 projects, live projects at the moment. And there we genuinely go out and try to find the doers, as I call them, the people who actually do things. And they come together and are enhanced by the funding from the Commission. And there are so many programs within the Commission that, frankly, it is not that easy to know what exists and who does what. And that's part of our guidance, if we like, through our team. If I could just maybe jump on, if I could, and bring you, Akshay in. I mean, we talked a lot in the first few minutes here about startups and so on, but one of the issues that we have heard from our own existing members, and we have startups, of course, but we also have scale-ups, and we also have some very large pharma companies and tech companies. But one of the complaints we get all the time is how difficult it is to get to the right person in a pharma company, because by their nature, the global ones are huge, and they have so many divisions that in many cases we say to somebody we know, can we speak to such and he goes, well, I'll have to find out who that is because they don't know themselves. Do you work between, I mean, you're not only pharma, but you also work with investors and so on. Do you see that as a problem for people to connect with pharma companies generally?
Yeah, thanks, Brian. Generally speaking, it's always a challenge to find the right individual in the pharma company, right? If you look at the types of pharma companies we have, just very broadly, we have the very large pharma companies, and then maybe the mid-market pharma companies and smaller pharma companies, right? So very often, when you look at the very large budgets and the ability for pharma companies to do, to invest in or use technology, it's a larger pharma companies are tending to use it because they have the ability and the financial means to do it. But that is a double-edged sword because, as you rightly pointed out, it's very difficult to identify the exact purse holder for that. And quite often, the way that pharma companies are organized is they're organized either by a country lead who may not understand the technology or not be willing to use it himself. Whereas, there's limited sort of traction you get if you go to cross-functional leads, right, where they don't tend to hold budgets, right? My advice on this is with the sort of technology that you have to really segment which are the pharma clients that are going to be most likely for you to be able to get traction with, and focus on them and sort of penetrate the organizations rather than trying to, let's call it, spray and pray, right? And going very, very wide, because the likelihood is that you'll just scratch the surface and you won't get into depth about who the right sort of stakeholders are within those companies.
That's very good advice, actually, because it ties in with something we just came across in one of our subsidiaries, which is called the Digital Health Society, which we set up about 2017. It was with the Estonian government, and that has been running a series of private invitation-only roundtables. And it's quite interesting what you learn from that, because you have to be invited to join. We don't get people who come in and just love attending lots of meetings. And I could list, I won't, but I could list some people who seem to be at every single meeting in the world. And I think, well, when do you have time to do anything? But leave that aside. In this case, we run these because the idea is that we can, under Chatham House rules, people can say what they want. So it's a mix of pharma, tech, public institutions. And our role in that is to then produce reports which are like recommendations to the European Commission as to where they should spend their money or allocate the funding in the future. And it's the reason pharma companies come in that they tell us is they have the same difficulty from their side. They're saying, we'd love to find more innovations. We'd love to buy some companies. They themselves, because of their scale and size, have difficulty identifying. One said to me the other day, you're like a marketplace brand. You have created around the world 81 opportunities for us who meet every 3 months or so in each of their geographic regions. You've created a marketplace where we can go and look at, we know more by attending those meetings and listening than we do by our own research. We know and can meet people who actually have got something real. But as you said earlier, Laura, some of them are still very small. They do not have the resources to go out and spray and whatever the term was, spray and hope or whatever it is. So I think what we're finding is if you're specific, if you're rifle shot, you may worry that you're missing lots of opportunities. but you're going to miss them anyway because there's too many of them. So you've got to be very, very, very specific. So I want to go back to you, Laura, just for a second. When you deal with so many people and it keeps growing, the health tech network, what are they asking for? What are they? I mean, I know it's a big question with so many members, but give us a few ideas of what they really want. Because remember, our members are listening to this as well.
Mhm.
Our ecosystem are listening and they're going, tell me what they want.
Yeah,
So,
no, indeed. I think the asks and needs are very diverse, and we try to cater to all of them, of course. But what I receive as questions is starting from having an interesting newsletter with sort of which keeps people up to date on what's happening, right? Are there any interesting conferences? Are there any interesting other networks maybe to get involved in? What funding news are there, etc. I think that's sort of the lowest threshold need that a lot of people are interested in. I think there are also a lot of members of the health tech network who basically know that we as McKinsey, of course, have a fantastic network across pharma, across medtech, across also public health, but also with investors, and who, of course, are very keen to get connected to that network in some shape or form. And the same is true from these other stakeholders, as I mentioned earlier. So I think that's also an important element for many members, both health techs, but also pharma companies, investors, etc., to be part of that network, to basically be connected to the pulse and to what's happening in terms of innovation, but also in terms of maybe funding opportunities or partnering opportunities. And I think lastly, we shouldn't underestimate the value of just being connected to people, knowing people, connecting with people also in person. During the pandemic, of course, the health tech network also moved to sort of virtual, like everyone, but we do try to do local CEO connects, for example, and roundtables and dinners and so on, so that people just can build their own in-person network.
yes.
And I think we all shouldn't, and I don't think any one of us does, underestimate this, the value of this. And I think those are the three main points. Then, of course, you sometimes have very specific questions, right? Where someone says, hey, we are hosting this event, or we are looking for a partner in that specific space. Could you put that, for example, on a newsletter, which of course, if it sort of fits with the values of the health tech network, we will always do. I think what is important, though, and that's why I'm emphasizing it, is we would only use the health tech network connection for connections that are really mutually beneficial, right? Sure. We wouldn't, blast, I don't know, an investor seeking companies in a certain space to people that may not be interested, because it's also not a commercial network, right? It's a network that everyone who's part of it should benefit from. So we do this very, let's say, targeted, and only where we really see that there is a mutual benefit that all the parties that we would be connecting have, so that it doesn't feel like you're a member of this and you kind of give your data or your contact for something that's in someone else's commercial interests.
Yeah, very helpful. Akshay, can I talk to you about investors and what they're looking for? Not just pharma companies themselves who invest a lot of money, of course, in buying things. I'm just wondering, I read all these reports, including some McKinsey reports, which from year to year or every 6 months tell me, oh, the market's not so good, and then they tell me the market's fantastic, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, what advice would you give to our members? I know health tech network members will hear this as well, but to our members in the Alliance across the world, as to what is the attitude and what are the priorities these days, if you could sum up.
Absolutely. So I think the first thing to say here is there's still a lot of keen interest in health technology, right? Be that pharma technology or health technology. And most investors are keen to understand how to get involved, right? Many of them are still nascent in their investments and they haven't made investments, so they're still unsure. And naturally, you get different types of investors. You get your seed, VC, growth, and then obviously the larger investors looking at the larger sort of digital health tech companies, right? And essentially, you know, they're very keen on the sort of outlook for health technology and health tech. You know, that could be, you know, increasing efficiency, improving outcomes, or, you know, improving customer experience, you know, any of those aspects. I think the challenges they're faced with, and hence why you see, you know, this sort of mixed picture when you look at it. You know, the last few years has changed quite significantly from a macroeconomic point of view, and investors are keen to understand the monetization of these entities. Either are they, you know, when will they be revenue generating, and more importantly, when will they be profit making, right? Because and that perhaps has been the biggest change about how investors see health tech, you know, from 3 or 4 years ago, where it was all about growth, and now it's probably more about profitability and EBITDA, right? So that's one area. The second area, I think, is as the industry has matured, them looking at, is this technology really differentiated, or can it be replicated very rapidly? Yeah. And, you know, what are the moats that I can create around this business that give me sticking power? I think that's the sort of second item. The third one is the scalability question, right? You may have a fantastic market share in your home country, but what is the applicability of this technology across borders, and does it work? And therefore, can I believe that this is going to scale, right? And so I think if you take those three into account, what we've seen over the last year or two is the interest has remained. However, I think investors are a little bit more picky in terms of who they back because of the criteria I laid out. So I think that's probably why you're getting mixed messages about interest versus actually, you know, actionability.
Yeah, brilliant. Tobias, I know we're wrapping up shortly. Do you want just to give any final comments from yourself, and then I'll ask Laura and I ask you as well. Do you just want to jump in, Tobias, and give us your sum up view of it?
I think what I'm very excited about, Brian, is sort of to go from Europe, where we've collaborated a lot so far now, also go into Africa, right, where the digital health network is being formed, where a lot of countries, including also then cross-regional organizations, are thinking about the future of digital health in Africa, and the same in Asia, especially with the India Digital Health Summit coming up in October. So I think there is a lot of work then also cross-region that can be done, and a lot of more connecting the dots required.
Yeah, thank you for that. Just saying that I think we're meeting together anyway, Tobias, in Mumbai actually in early October for the digital summit. And it's interesting, that's another example of where that summit only started about 2 years ago. It's only the third summit this year. And I went to the first one in Delhi. It's run by one of our partners, Health Parliament out over there, Professor Henda Gupta, and he wrote the digital health strategy for the whole of India. So as a start, and we had McKinsey speaking at that conference. We'll have again. What's fascinating is when you go to India, as I have done, and I don't pretend to understand India, but what I do know is the scale of everything that happens in India is incredible. What I was very interested in was to compare India with Africa, because while we were in India, we actually had a session of our Global Health Connector, and we had virtual representation from Africa. And the amount of collaboration between Africa and India, I was not aware of, particularly on digital health. And indeed, hospital groups in India are now investing quite heavily in Africa. And our connections there through the African CDC and our business partner, Africa Health Business, have started to generate this Africa digital health networks. And we are opening ecosystems in Africa as we speak, because it's about those connections. So as we build our global network, I suspect we'll never finish building it, but that's just the nature, rather like Health Tech Network. It goes on growing because that's the nature of it. So I'm very grateful to you, Tobias, for all the time you've turned up for all of our events, and look forward to seeing you again, hopefully before India. But if not, could I just round up then? I know, Tobias, you have another call to take. if you need to disappear, do. Not we're telling you to go away, but if you have to, you have to. Laura, can I just finish off talking to you about, we have already been cooperating for a number of years now on the Health Tech Network. We in the Alliance see it as a wonderful way to inform a much bigger audience, which you have convened. And just to be clear, we're very keen to continue not to put sales pushes for sponsorships and stuff in it, but to give them meaningful content. So one of the thoughts I had was that as you do these CEO panels, dinners, and so on in different places, bear in mind, we have these 81 ecosystems which meet regularly in their own country. In Europe, for example, we probably have about a couple of hundred meetings a year. So that would give some of your members an opportunity to actually turn up in person to existing structured ecosystem meetings. And we'd be happy to extend that invitation in their particular area. And there are a number, for example, in Germany, Toby, as you know, a number of your members actually attend and some of your members are our members and vice versa. So I just want to say that, again, going back to specifics, I'm very keen that there should be real collaboration as opposed to talking about collaboration. We already do it, but I think we could enhance it by meaningful content for your newsletter and communication. B, maybe explaining more about our ability to include some of your members in these Horizon Europe and other programs in Europe. And of course, when we define who might be interested in Africa, India, or the US, or Latin America for that matter, that might be another category we could work on. Are those sorts of ideas the ones that you would like to hear from us? Because if you say yes, we will follow up for sure. What's your thought?
No, absolutely. As I said, we are all about connecting people that would benefit from a mutual connection. And so what you're describing, regarding meaningful content, news, updates, etc., would for sure be very interesting for many of our members. So let's for sure stay in touch on this, because I think, as I said in the beginning, we all, and by that I mean specifically also the health tech companies, can just benefit from a bigger connection or bigger connectivity than a smaller one. So that's why I'm all for that.
Okay, well, we'll definitely follow up on that. Akshay, just to finish off with yourself, I mean, I'm sure that we also would like to get from time to time meaningful content, to use the words again, from McKinsey. I don't mean huge reports, because a lot of our members may go, yeah, how is this relevant to me, right? But we did get some very good reports from McKinsey on green health, for example, and on the economic benefits of health systems and so on, which we've published and will publish. But it might be useful at some point to be able to come back to you and get some of your advice and input to our members, particularly on the investor question we talked about, and also on the question of accessing pharma, and pharma indeed accessing our members. So would you be up for that as well? Can I?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we have already, good insights in this place, and whichever way we can sort of make those more tailored and more applicable to the members, better so.
We will definitely be in touch. That's a promise, not a threat. So I just want to thank you, all of you, and it's good to meet all of you again and see you again, Tobias.
Fantastic.
Thank you very much. And thanks for the great work.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Bye-bye now.
Bye.